Welcome to episode 1.15. I read from Article 187 to Article 195. Article 187. Roles and duties of the Ministry responsible for Environment and Natural Resources. The Ministry responsible for Environment and Natural Resources has the following roles and duties. A. Develop strategic plans and action plans for the management of hazardous substances in the environment and for emergency response in cases of hazardous substance explosion, spillage, or leakage incidents. B. Develop legal instruments concerning hazardous substances in products to enhance the control of release and environmental pollution issues related to hazardous substances. C. Develop lists of prohibited types of hazardous substances and lists of permitted hazardous substances for production, importation, distribution, or use with conditions. D. Develop and manage data on hazardous substances produced, imported, distributed, and used in the Kingdom of Cambodia. E. Develop technical guidelines for managing hazardous substances and emergency response. To prevent and mitigate hazardous substance release in the environment, to be implemented on sites or activities related to the production, importation, transportation, storage, distribution, use, and disposal of hazardous substances. F. Monitor and inspect the sites or activities related to the production, importation, transportation, storage, distribution, use, and disposal of hazardous substances. G. Research the level of hazardous substance release in the environment, biological samples, and food products, consumer goods, or toys. H. Fulfill the duty as a national focal point of international legal instruments concerning hazardous substance management in the Kingdom of Cambodia. Article 188. Research, monitoring, and control of hazardous substance release. 1. The Ministry responsible for Environment and Natural Resources, in collaboration with competent ministries or institutions and subnational administration, shall research and monitor the sites that produce, store, and use hazardous substances and products containing hazardous substances to enhance the implementation of release preventive measures or public health and environmental risk mitigation. 2. Findings from research and monitoring of hazardous substance release shall be disseminated, and the public shall be informed in accordance with the provisions of this Code. Chapter 3. Registration of hazardous substances and chemical products containing hazardous substances. Article 189. Registration of hazardous substances. 1. Persons producing, importing, or distributing hazardous substances or chemical products containing hazardous substances shall register those at the sectoral ministries or institutions, in accordance with applicable legal instruments set out within APRACAs by the Minister responsible for Environment and Natural Resources. 2. The types of hazardous substances or chemical products containing hazardous substances that need to be registered shall be determined in APRACAs by the Ministry responsible for Environment and Natural Resources. Article 190. Notification of hazardous substance registration. Persons producing, importing, or distributing registered hazardous substances or chemical products containing hazardous substances as stated in Article 189, registration of hazardous substances of this code shall provide a copy of their registration to the Ministry responsible for Environment and Natural Resources to enable the Ministry to organize hazardous substances, monitor and evaluate, take preventive measures or respond to hazardous substance risks, and inform the public about hazardous substances. Article 191. Registration of products, consumer goods, and toys containing hazardous substances. 1. Persons producing, importing, or distributing products or consumer goods and toys containing hazardous substances as stated in this code shall be registered at the Ministry responsible for Environment and Natural Resources. 2. The procedure for registering products, consumer goods, and toys containing hazardous substances, as stated in paragraph 1 above, shall be determined in APRACAs by the Minister responsible for Environment and Natural Resources. Article 192. Refusal to register. Sectoral ministries or institutions and the Ministry responsible for Environment and Natural Resources shall refuse to register hazardous substances and products or consumer goods and toys containing hazardous substances as stated in Article 189, Registration of Hazardous Substances, and Article 191, Registration of Products, Consumer Goods, and Toys containing hazardous substances of this code, if a. hazardous substances and products or consumer goods and toys containing hazardous substances in the registration application are on the prohibited list under this code or relevant applicable legal instruments for production, importation, distribution, or use. B. hazardous substances and products or consumer goods and toys containing hazardous substances in registration applications are prohibited from production or use in accordance with international legal tools to which Cambodia is a state party. C. hazardous substances and products or consumer goods and toys containing hazardous substances in the registration application are found to potentially cause high risks to public health and the environment. D. documentation affirming the characteristics or level of hazardous substances is insufficient. Article 193. Revocation of Certificate of Registration. Sectoral ministries or institutions and the ministry responsible for environment and natural resources shall revoke the registration of hazardous substances and products or consumer goods and toys containing hazardous substances if a. found that using or releasing hazardous substances has caused severe risks to public health and the environment, b. prohibited by relevant applicable legal instruments or international legal tools to which Cambodia is a state party. Chapter 4. Labeling of hazard signs, hazard warnings, chemical labels, and safety information of hazardous substances. Article 194. Labeling of hazard signs on packaging materials and transportation means of hazardous substances. All packaging materials and transportation means of hazardous substances, as stated in the provisions of this code, shall contain hazard signs and hazard warnings and attach documents on hazardous substance safety information in accordance with relevant applicable legal instruments. Article 195. Labeling of hazard warnings on products or consumer goods and toys containing hazardous substances. Products or consumer goods and toys containing hazardous substances shall contain hazard warnings before distribution or sale in accordance with relevant applicable legal instruments. Article 196. Labeling on chemical products and consumer product chemicals. 1. All chemical products and consumer product chemicals shall contain hazardous chemical labels and other hazard warnings in accordance with relevant applicable legal instruments. 2. Hazardous chemical labels and hazard warnings on chemical products shall contain the following information. A. Information about the products and categories of products. B. Symbols of hazards. C. Warnings. D. Vulnerability information shall be organized by chronological order, categories, and hazard levels of the chemical products and consumer goods chemicals. E. Information on preventive measures or how to use them. F. Information on producers or suppliers. G. Labels that are clear, legible, durable, indelible, or unfading. Thank you.